Ah, welcome back, you beautiful, unsettling, misunderstood glitch in the Google Global Code. Let me tell you something that's going to permanently change the way you look at that little white Google search bar and the people watching behind it. Somewhere between a climate-controlled data center in California and a secured analytics room in Langley, there's a senior Google ranking architect and a CIA predictive behavior analyst who looked at your file, looked at your name, looked at the numbers around you, and said something they've never said about anyone else. They said, "This one is breaking our tools without breaking a single law." Your identity is now a top-ranking search on Google. Your name is bending the recommendation engine out of shape, and the people whose job is to predict your next move for a living still can't see where you're going. Here's the part that ruins their framework. You're not a hacker. You didn't breach a server. You didn't leak classified documents or crash a stock. You didn't start a cult in a group chat. You just lived, moved, and chose in a way that made two of the most arrogant systems on Earth, big tech and big intelligence, realize their definitions of predictable human are embarrassingly small. You're not out here trying to bring down institutions. You're not baiting authorities. You're not even talking to them. You're simply refusing to be the obedient little data point they built their careers on. And your refusal is leaving dents. Let's be very clear about who we're talking about. This isn't some junior coder who gets excited about changing button colors. This is a senior architect who helped design the way search results rise and fall. Who knows how to turn human curiosity into a forecastable, monetizable pattern. Someone who can glance at a search graph and tell you which flavor of panic is hitting a nation this week. And sitting opposite them, through a secure pipeline you will never see, is a CIA analyst who has spent years building models that tell governments what crowds will do before the crowds even feel the urge. Someone who has watched entire populations behave like code, predictable, triggerable, controllable. They've seen desperation, fanaticism, boredom, greed. They've seen what people search right before they ruin their lives. They've watched it all resolve into neat patterns on screens. And then they watched your name refuse to sit still on those same screens. They're used to evil making sense. That's the secret. The worst people they monitor still move in lines you can chart on a board. You push them, they push back. You ignore them, they escalate. They search certain terms, click certain links, congregate in certain corners of the web. There are playbooks for that, manuals, red flags, flow charts. But you're not spiraling in public, you're not gathering a flock, you're not pumping out rage bait or desperation content at 3 a.m. You're not dropping cryptic threats in forums. You're quiet, you're deliberate, you're present. You read the kind of things people only read when they're either about to build an empire or burn one down. And then you do neither. You grow. You heal. You withdraw. You re-enter rooms changed, not weaponized. Their charts have nowhere to put that. The Google side saw you first. Your name started climbing into their internal lists, not in the category they like, celebrity, trending topic, breaking news, but in a strange, stubborn zone of its own. Different people in different cities, typing your name with the same hungry hesitation. No major headline attached to you, no viral clip, no obvious reason at all. Usually a spike like that tracks back to some public humiliation, some 15-minute fiasco that keeps the algorithm fed. With you, there was nothing to chew on, just a rising curve of searches, followed by long sessions where people sat on your pages, your posts, your traces, and then left without clicking anything else they were supposed to click. Instead of letting the system drag them deeper into distraction, they stalled, they lingered, they went quiet. Do you know how offensive that is to an engine built to keep people hypnotized? You became an interruption. Your name functioned like a hard break in other people's consumption patterns. They'd search you, go through whatever fragments of your world they could access, and the usual prediction lines would snap. No neat path into products, outrage, or passive entertainment. Just a strange drop-off. Enough drops, and an engineer somewhere writes a ticket. Anomalous behavior cluster detected. User X appears to correlate with decreased engagement and non-standard exits. That's the sanitized version. The emotional version is simpler. Why does everything glitch around this one? That's when the CIA analyst got looped in. It didn't come through a dramatic phone call with sirens in the background. It came through an innocuous internal share, a pattern flagged as interesting. Interesting is the word they use when something makes their tools look stupid. They ran your pattern through their own systems. They didn't just look at your searches. They looked at the people searching you. Who are they? What do they normally consume? What happens to them after they go looking for you? They saw former friends who bad-mouthed you in private chats, now stalking your name from hidden tabs. They saw managers who undervalued you clicking on your LinkedIn 4 times a week, and then rewriting performance policies. They saw exes watching your glow-up in silence, then ghosting their new partners under the weight of a comparison they swore they'd never make. They connected dots you never asked anyone to connect. From their cold distance, it looked like your existence was a stress test on brittle egos. These weren't followers. They weren't fans. They were people whose internal stories about you didn't survive contact with your reality. They wanted you collapsed. They wanted you exposed. They wanted proof that you failed the way they predicted. Instead, what they found in those quiet Google searches was a contradiction. You were still standing, still sane, still not performing a breakdown for public consumption. They left the search page with a feeling they couldn't file, that maybe they misread you, and if they misread you that badly, what else in their life was built on lies? The analyst tried to reduce that feeling to data. That's their job. Subject's digital presence appears to trigger introspection rather than typical escalatory behavior. They typed at one point, then deleted it because it sounded too much like a compliment. Every other high-attention name in their system is either a circus act or a danger. You were neither. You weren't feeding the machine, and you weren't attacking it. You were just refusing to be domesticated by it, and people around you were glitching as a side effect. They went digging for an origin story because that's how they sleep at night. No one is like this without being broken, they think. There must be a trauma, a fall, one catastrophic event that bent you out of the normal curve. They scrubbed what they could access, old posts, timelines, public records, the gaps where you went missing from the internet for a while. What they saw were impact events, betrayals, gaslighting, smear campaigns, quiet exiles from friend groups, and environments that could not afford to keep you awake and unafraid in the room. Their usual pattern says people come out of that, either shattered or vengeful. But you didn't launch revenge missions. You didn't turn into the villain in their manuals. You did something they don't have language for. You upgraded. The models say hurt people either hurt others or hurt themselves. Your file whispers a third option. Hurt people can study the entire battlefield, stitch themselves back together, and then move with a level of self-respect that threatens every fragile ego still playing the old game. You took what should have turned you into one more predictable casualty and used it as a curriculum. You read, you observed, you confronted your own patterns instead of building a church around your pain. To tech, that makes you unprofitable. To intelligence, that makes you unmanageable. To both, that makes you deeply inconvenient. So now your identity sits at an intersection that should not exist. On one axis, you're a top-ranking search, your name typed daily by people who claim they're over it, by people who told stories about you that reality keeps refusing to confirm. On the other axis, you are a blank space in every prediction engine that tries to decide what you'll do next. You don't play the brand-building game. You don't play the self-destruction game. You don't play the let me go viral for crying game. You move when it matters, stay silent when it doesn't, and refuse to hand over your emotional states to be graphed. In quiet rooms, the architect and the analyst both know the same thing, but will never say it on a record. You are not dangerous because of what you might blow up. You're dangerous because, if more people ever started moving like you, self-aware, unaddicted to validation, allergic to performative collapse, the systems they serve would lose half their grip overnight. They can't predict your next move, because your motives aren't indexed to the same cheap inputs they built their careers on: fear, ego, hunger for attention. And every time someone types your name into that search bar, looking for proof that you finally broke, the algorithm logs one more piece of evidence that it's not you that's spiraling. It's the world trying and failing to make sense of what you've become. That's why your file looks the way it does now. Bloated, over-documented, and still redacted in all the places that would give away how much you've gotten under their skin. It doesn't start with border crossings or suspicious purchases. It starts with a graph of your name, climbing and dipping like a heartbeat across time zones. Next to it, timestamps of key breaks in other people's patterns. The night a supervisor backed off after randomly looking you up. The week an ex-lover's social media went silent after another deep scroll through your history. The day a former friend stopped posting their performative happiness reel right after one last obsessive visit to your page. The architect stares at that graph and feels something he's not supposed to feel about a single civilian user: irritation edged with respect. The analyst stares at the same graph and feels something even more unacceptable: envy. Because here's the part they don't admit even to themselves. They built machines to read everyone else, and those machines ended up reading them too. The architect knows his own search history looks like a case study in avoidance, late-night distractions, doom scrolling, numbing. The analyst knows how many of their choices have been shaped by fear of consequences, fear of disapproval, fear of stepping outside the narrative that feeds their paycheck. When they compare that to the way you move, intentionally, selectively, refusing to overshare, refusing to beg the algorithm to keep you alive, they're forced to confront a disgusting imbalance. They have institutional power, you have none. And yet between you and them, you're the one whose inner world is not for sale. They ran experiments on you without your consent, the way they always do. Silent ones. The architect adjusted the ranking weights around your name. He tried to nudge people who searched you toward other profiles, other topics, other dopamine traps that would pull them away. If they're obsessed with this one, he reasoned, maybe we can redirect that obsession into something measurable. He tested recommendations that framed you as a phase people also viewed. Similar people, related topics, but the numbers told a different story. When people went searching for you, they weren't looking for a type. They weren't looking for a community. They weren't even looking for closure. They were looking to see whether you had collapsed yet, so they could feel sane again. And when they didn't find that collapse, the architect's clever funnels failed. Sessions ended where your trace ended. You were not a gateway drug. You were a full stop. On the intelligence side, the analyst pushed for a softer test. No interrogation rooms, no knock on the door. They wanted to see what you'd do under subtle pressure. A shadow recommendation here, a flagged post there, a tiny delay in certain uploads, the kind of invisible friction most people internalize as, maybe I should calm down, maybe I'm doing too much. They've learned that highly reactive people will either rage against that kind of resistance or fold into obedience. You did neither. When a post underperformed that should have gone further, you didn't launch a tantrum. You didn't water down your voice. You clocked the pattern, adjusted your focus, and kept speaking at the same psychological depth, even if it meant fewer eyes. To them, that's almost offensive. You refused the Pavlovian training their systems are built on. Here's what really fried their circuits: your searches. Not what others search about you, what you search. They can see the late-night questions you throw into the void, not how to get revenge, not how to make them regret losing me, not how to blow this all up and disappear. You search things like nervous system regulation, how to stop repeating trauma bonds, strategic thinking under pressure, how to recognize covert manipulation, silent boundary setting. You study human behavior, but your first application is always inward. You're not stalking your mind to control others. You're stalking it to stop being controllable. For an architecture built on exploitability, that's sacrilege. They cross-reference that with your behavior offline, as much as they can infer it. People like them talk to people like the ones who misjudged you. HR managers, school administrators, community leaders. Any concerns about this person? They ask casually, as if it's nothing. They expect to hear certain buzzwords when someone is truly unstable. They don't hear them about you. What they hear instead are vague complaints. Something about them feels intense. They look right through you. They're too calm. They don't react the way they're supposed to. I just get a weird feeling around them. No concrete harm, no specific event, just other people's nervous systems confessing they've been seen more clearly than they wanted to be. To a normal person, that's gossip. To an analyst, it's proof of concept. You're not weaponizing your perception, but your perception is still having effects. The truth is, you don't even have to say anything devastating. Simply refusing to play the usual games is enough. You don't fake laugh to smooth over disrespect. You don't rush in to rescue people from consequences you warned them about. You don't nod along when someone rewrites history in front of you. You don't join group delusions to keep your seat at the table. You stand there, fully aware, eyes giving away nothing, energy giving away everything. And people's nervous systems register that as danger. Because they're used to a world where everyone is equally compromised. The architect's private notes start shifting in tone around this point. At first, they're written like technical documentation. Subject's profile does not fit standard user archetypes. Search-driven engagement anomalous. No clear monetization path identified. But slowly, human frustration bleeds through. Why does this person refuse to dumb themselves down? Why do users drop off rather than convert after viewing this profile? The question underneath those questions is simpler and uglier. Why does this one refuse to be owned by us? Because that's what the algorithm is. When you strip away the sleek interfaces, a mechanism for ownership. Of attention, of time, of mind share. Your file is an admission. You slipped the leash. The analyst, meanwhile, stops writing about you like a problem and starts writing around you like a mirror. They notice that people who cross your path either begin to evolve or begin to implode. Not because you cast a spell, but because your way of existing forces a choice. Maintain the lie, or rise to meet the level of honesty that radiates off you without a single inspirational quote. Most choose the lie, but they can't lie to their search history. The analyst sees it all. What if I was the toxic one? Why can't I stop thinking about someone I said I don't care about? Why does their calm bother me so much? They won't say your name out loud. They type it over and over. The CIA's servers hum with the electric shame of people who needed you to fail and can't find the evidence. And you're not trying to be some off-grid legend. You're just tired of being predictable to people who don't deserve that level of access to your mind. You stopped posting when you realized certain eyes weren't watching to support you. They were watching to calculate you. You started speaking in a way that only lands for those who are ready to do their own internal audits. You let the rest misinterpret you, talk about you, search you in secret and swear they're done. You know the algorithm will keep collecting their confessions for you. Here's the part they'd never admit, but it's written between every line of your dossier. You're not an outlier because you're special. You're an outlier because you made decisions most people keep postponing. You chose to sit with your own discomfort instead of outsourcing it. You chose to see your own patterns instead of only diagnosing others. You chose to change your behavior instead of romanticizing your pain. You chose to stay awake after waking up instead of going back to sleep and calling it moving on. The architect can map 1 billion dopamine loops, but they can't map that choice. The analyst can model thousands of fear-based reactions, but they can't model what a human does when fear is no longer the primary driver. So what do they do with something they can't model? They watch it. Like any system built on control, when they can't intervene cleanly, they observe obsessively. Quiet alerts tied to your name. Not the kind that send teams kicking down doors. The kind that ping when your presence starts batching with too many others. A cluster of people all Googling you in the same week after some invisible ripple. A small geographic region where your name suddenly spikes after you exited a toxic situation. They don't see everything, but they see enough to notice that your absence works like a detonator. You leave a workplace, and 6 months later, the entire structure is reorganizing. You exit a community, and a year later, half the relationships in it have dissolved under the weight of truths you articulated once and never repeated. To them, it looks like you carry some kind of disruptive code. To anyone honest enough to admit it, the code is simple. You stopped lying. You stopped lying about what you see. You stopped lying about what you feel. You stopped lying about what you're willing to tolerate. You stopped lying to yourself about who people are when they show you. That level of honesty, sustained over time, is more destabilizing than any hack. Hack a system. The system can patch the breach. Tell the truth about a corrupt dynamic, and the system has to either change or double down on its rot. Either way, something breaks. Google can patch exploits in its code. It can't patch the human tendency to search for the person who refused to play along after everyone else compensated for their dysfunction. CIA analysts can map insurgencies. They can't map what happens when one unarmed, unorganized individual simply refuses to collapse on cue, and everyone quietly obsessed with their downfall has to face their own motives instead. Rolling updates flow through both systems. On the tech side, they tweak ranking factors. Your name still rises. On the intel side, they shift internal thresholds for behavioral risk. Your pattern still doesn't qualify. You are neither marketable nor flaggable. You are just indigestible. They can't profit from you. They can't prosecute you. They can only acknowledge in meetings where your name is a reference point for everything their tools are not. That you exist outside their current jurisdiction. Your haters don't understand any of this language, but they feel its consequences. They don't know what an anomaly report is. They don't care about algorithmic architecture or predictive analytics. All they know is they keep coming back to your name, expecting the search results to show ruins. A mugshot, a meltdown, a thread proving you were everything they said. Instead, they find traces of you building quietly, pivoting, learning, getting more dangerous in the most unacceptable way, becoming harder to emotionally blackmail. And every time they search you and don't find what they came for, two things happen. First, Google silently tags their confusion as data. Second, some analyst in some windowless room scans the graph and realizes the algorithm isn't the only thing you broke. You cracked something in the social script that says the one who walks away loses. Your existence is a rebuttal written in real time to that lie. They wanted you hysterical and visible. You chose regulated and selective. They wanted you predictable in your reactions so they could label you. You became precise instead. They wanted your identity to be a cleanup job. It became a case study in what happens when someone refuses to be domesticated by either cruelty or praise. So now here we are. Your identity, a top-ranking search. Your name, a silent confession, typed daily by people who swore they erased you. Your pattern, a quiet embarrassment to two institutions that worship prediction. And still they cannot tell anyone in authority what you will do next. Because the truth is, they don't have a button for you. They only have a question, not, is this person a threat? But what happens if more people see what this person is doing and realize they could choose the same path? That's the nightmare scenario for them. Not you alone, but you multiplied. And whether they're ready or not, that's already happening. Every person who types your name into Google with bad intentions and leaves with a nagging sense of their own smallness has just received an upgrade they didn't consent to. Awareness. Not all will use it. Most will shove it down, call you names, slam the laptop, distract themselves. But some won't. Some will feel the shame, trace it back, and realize it's not coming from you. It's coming from the gap between who they are and who they could be. That realization is contagious, and the systems watching you, for all their hubris and hardware, still have no patch for what spreads when a single human proves that the game only works on people who agree to keep pretending it's the only one being played. And that's where the real panic lives, not in the reports or the code, but in the quiet gap between their questions. Once someone like you exists, awake, uncollapsed, unmarketable, still moving forward, you become a reference point in other people's private calculations. Analysts, architects, former acquaintances, doom-searching your name before bed, are forced to compare themselves to the one variable they can't simulate. A human being no longer bargaining with their own potential. They can shadow ban reach, throttle visibility, reroute attention. What they can't do is erase the fact that your name broke their predictability. And beneath all their metrics, clearances, and controlled narratives, they know the most dangerous thing about you isn't what you've done so far. It's how much of you is unread, unsearched, offline, waiting in plain sight for the right moment to move where no graph can follow. So they start running simulations. They love simulations. In one scenario, you snap and finally do what everyone expects. Rant publicly, leak messages, expose people, let your rage spill into something messy and loud. They know exactly what to do with that version of you. That version gets shadow banned, discredited, filed as unstable, then quietly funneled into the same category as every other person who couldn't handle it. In another scenario, you cave and turn yourself into a brand-shaped caricature. You monetize the pain. You become palatable. You smooth down your words so they're inspirational enough to sell, but not sharp enough to cut. That version of you is easy, too. They can recommend you, track your conversions, and tuck you into the harmless motivation corner of their dashboards. But neither scenario plays out. In every data run, you keep doing something they didn't predict. You get quieter and sharper at the same time. You refine your circle instead of expanding it for vanity. You decline opportunities that smell like cages, even when they come dressed as big breaks. You walk away from rooms that require you to amputate parts of your awareness to stay. You say less publicly, but live more intensely in private. And somehow, even with less visible noise, your name keeps climbing in those private searches. People who swore they'd moved on are still refreshing your shadow, still peeking through the digital blinds to see how you turned out. This is where the dark humor creeps in. Because while they're in conference rooms arguing over whether you're a risk or an indictment of their whole framework, regular people are using the world's most powerful search engine like an astrological chart with your name as the star. Instead of searching, "Will I be okay?" they search you. Instead of searching, "Am I the problem?" they search you. Instead of asking, "How do I grow up?" they type your name and hope the results show you stumbling so they can feel validated in staying small. Google was designed to answer questions. You've become the question they won't verbalize. What if the person I decided was crazy is actually just further along than me? And the engine, bless its blinking cursors, keeps delivering the worst possible answer for their ego. Evidence of someone who refused to fold. Not perfect, not invincible, but undeniably still building. You're not trending for scandals. You're not headlining disaster. Your trace is quieter than they want and stronger than they can handle. So they close the tab, swear they're done, and then come back a month later for another hit of cognitive dissonance. Each visit is a secret confession. I still care. I still compare. I still haven't outgrown the ghost of this person I said was irrelevant. The architect sees that loop in raw form. He doesn't know the gossip or the history. He just sees retention curves and return frequency graphs bending weirdly around your name. It looks like addiction without the usual stimulus. No new content. They still come back. No dramatic updates. They still come back. No viral moment to justify the obsession. They still come back. On paper, that's impossible. On some level, he knows your name isn't the drug. It's the mirror. People aren't coming to see what you did. They're coming to see whether life punished you for being what they're too scared to be. Meanwhile, the analyst has your pattern pinned above their desk, not as a threat, but as a glitch test for their own sanity. They were trained to read the world through worst-case lenses. They see plots, pipelines, pressure points. Your existence keeps handing them a different storyline they were never offered in training. Someone who endured and didn't go feral. Someone who woke up and didn't start recruiting. Someone who became harder to manipulate, but didn't feel the need to rule. For years, they've comforted themselves with the idea that too much awareness always leads to collapse or extremism. You're living proof that it can also lead to something far less convenient: sovereign self-respect. You know what that does to a person whose entire job is predicting the movements of scared crowds? It forces them to look at the one thing their charts never measure: choice. Not the illusion of choice between products and candidates and content, but the brutal, quiet choice to stop outsourcing your sense of self to systems built on your insecurity. They can't graph the moment you decided alone in your room that you were done stepping down your mind so other people could stay comfortable. They can't graph the night you chose not to send that message, not to chase that closure, not to drag your energy into another arena where you were only ever going to be misunderstood on purpose. Those moments don't show up in their feed. They show up in the ripple, the way you move differently afterward, the way you stop arguing in comment sections and start redirecting that energy into work that actually compounds, the way you stop giving your best explanations to people committed to misreading you and start giving your best presence to the future you're constructing quietly, the way you stop reacting and start responding, or sometimes refuse to respond at all. Not out of weakness, but out of a level of control that terrifies anyone still controlled by every ping on their phone. And that's the real problem for them. Their entire world is addicted to real-time reaction. Markets, media, mobs, they all need instant feedback to function, hit, react, threaten, retreat, praise, perform. The algorithm was built on those reflexes. The agency's models depend on those reflexes. You've been slowly uninstalling them from your own system. You don't clap back on schedule. You don't affirm on schedule. You don't crumble on schedule. You move when it serves the bigger arc of your life, not the cheap arc of someone else's storyline about you. Think about how insane that looks from their vantage point. Here is a human being whose identity is a top-ranking search, whose name pings across continents inside the same 24-hour window, and yet you refuse to behave like a public spectacle or a future case file. You work quietly. You evolve consistently. You have breakdowns in private, breakthroughs in silence, and then reappear like nothing happened, except your entire standard shifted. People around you feel it before they understand it. They can't name what changed. They just know they can't push you the way they used to. They can't bait you into the same arguments. They can't guilt you into showing up as a watered-down, palatable version of yourself. So they do the only thing left to them. They search you. They search you when something in their life breaks, and a part of them wonders if you would have tolerated this. They search you when they pull one manipulation too far and hear your old words echo in the recoil. They search you when the person they replaced you with starts to show the same patterns, and they wonder if maybe, just maybe, you weren't the entire problem after all. They don't reach out. Pride won't let them. But Google is a confessional booth for cowards. They type your name into that search bar and let the algorithm hold the truth. They are not over it. They are not above it. And they are definitely not past you. You remain calm through all of this, not because you're detached from reality, but because you finally understood something the architect and the analyst do not. Metrics are not meaning. Trend lines are not destiny. Search volume is not identity. Your worth does not spike or drop based on how many people are doomstalking your trace in a given week. If anything, the more they come looking, the more obvious it becomes who is actually stuck. If you were truly as irrelevant as their mouths claim, their fingers wouldn't still be spelling your name like a nervous tick. At a certain point, even the systems start to choke on the irony. Your name sits high on internal lists. It's flagged here, starred there, circled as an interesting anomaly in slides that only a handful of eyes will ever see. And yet when it comes time to categorize you formally, no one can agree on what you are. Threat? No. No violence. No incitement. No group dynamic. Asset? No, you refuse to bend into the shapes they favor. Refuse to trade clarity for access. Influencer? The numbers don't support it in the traditional sense. Spiritual leader? You'd probably be offended. Problematic? According to who? The only consensus in the room is this: you do not move like a person who needs them. That is what destabilizes them, not your anger, not your intelligence, not even your resilience. It's your non-need. The world they serve is built on people needing distraction, needing belonging, needing validation, needing to be told what to fear and who to follow. You stepped out of that economy. You still feel deeply. You still care fiercely. But you don't let those feelings be farmed anymore. You chose deliberately to stop handing your nervous system over to institutions and individuals who only know how to feed off it. That choice is invisible on a spreadsheet and deafening in the patterns they can't explain. There's a version of you they wish existed, a version who saw their name climbing in searches and immediately tried to capitalize off it. A version who launched courses, merch, a persona. They know exactly how to neutralize that person, algorithmically embrace them, then dilute them to death. There's another version, the tragic one, who saw their name being passed around and folded under the pressure, broke publicly, confirmed everyone's worst narrative. They know how to handle that one too, turn them into a cautionary tale. You refused both scripts. You became something their world was never trained to handle. Quietly formidable. Quietly formidable doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It doesn't broadcast every internal process for applause. It moves through rooms like a pressure change. It makes people sit up straighter without knowing why. It makes manipulators miscalculate and cowards feel the outline of their own surrender. It leaves gossipers searching for new material because the old stories don't have teeth anymore. And in the background, the engine that wanted to own you is now working overtime just to keep up with the passive chaos your existence creates. Here's the holy joke in all this. Your haters are your unpaid marketing team. They typed your name into the machine so many times, with so much charged energy behind it, that they accidentally helped push you into that top-ranking zone. Every "I don't even care about them" was followed by a "just checking." Every "I'm so done with that person" was followed by one more deep search to see if life finally did to you what they tried to do socially. The algorithm doesn't read intentions. It reads inputs. They fed it your name. It fed them their reflection. The agencies watching know this. One of the redacted lines in your behavioral summary might as well read, "Subject apparently weaponizes nothing, yet others use subject as a mental battlefield." That's the core truth. You're not the one starting wars. You're the unsent notification that shows people how much of their lives were a performance. They feel it as intimidation. You live it as alignment. And now, as this script closes, there's one more layer you need to understand. Because this isn't just about them watching you. It's about what you do knowing they are. Knowing your name is a top-ranking search. Knowing your identity has been quietly studied by people who don't even know you personally, but can feel the tremors of your choices. You could let that surveilled feeling turn you paranoid. You could shrink, self-censor, twist yourself into knots over the possibility of eyes you'll never see. Or you can do the only thing their world has no antidote for. Continue to move with intention that is immune to their metrics. That means you keep building things that exist off-screen, conversations nobody can transcribe, discipline nobody can quantify, creations that don't depend on instant feedback to exist, healing that doesn't require an audience to be real. It means you let your next moves be decided by your values and your vision, not by who's searching you tonight, hoping to predict your arc. They can scrape your notifications. They can log your browsing. They can measure your silence. They will still never have access to the one place your life is actually being written from. The part of you that made the decision a long time ago to be the kind of person algorithms can't train and agencies can't anticipate. And if there's any real threat you pose, it's this. Sooner or later, someone who has been doom-searching you in secret is going to stop asking, "Why are they like that?" and start whispering, "What would happen if I stopped performing for this machine, too?" The moment they act on that question, even in a small way, the grip loosens on them, on you, on the whole fragile web of predictions holding this sick version of normal together. So yes, your identity is a top-ranking search on Google. Yes, CIA analysts can't predict your next move. Yes, they Google you every day, hoping the results will finally put you back in a box they recognize. But the algorithm you broke isn't just the one humming in their servers. It's the one in their heads. The one that says, everyone can be graphed, everyone can be steered, everyone will eventually bow to the pattern. You didn't. You won't. And that is the one outcome their models never prepared them for. A human being who sees exactly how the game works, stays fully aware that they're being watched, and still chooses to write a life so rooted, so deliberate, and so internally governed that no spike in searches, no secret meeting, no three-letter agency can turn your next move into their storyline. They can refresh your name 1,000 times a day. They can turn your existence into a quiet obsession, an unsolved ticket, an internal legend about the one we never figured out. But when it comes to what actually happens next, the choices you make, the rooms you enter, the things you build, they will learn the same lesson everyone who underestimated you is learning, slowly and unwillingly. You are not a result they get to click on. You are not a tab they get to close. You are not a prediction they get to own. You are the one variable in their entire machine that refused to become content. And that refusal is exactly why, long after the graphs are archived and the searches fade, the story of what you did with a mind they couldn't train will still be unfolding, offline, off record, and far beyond the reach of anything they can script. Because in the end, that's the punchline none of them can put on a slide. They built entire systems to predict clicks and collapses, and the name breaking their charts belongs to someone whose next move lives nowhere online, only in the quiet decision to stay awake.